Welcome to this week's session on Practical Guide to Digital Forensics Investigations. The objectives of this session include the definition and importance of digital forensics, understand different types of digital evidence and how they are used, understand the skills, training, and education required to become a digital forensics investigator, and know the job opportunities in the field of digital forensics, and understand the history of digital forensics, and understand agencies in the US and internationally involved in digital forensics investigations. Forensic means suitable for a court of law, and it's related with the evidence, and the evidence needs to be suitable for a court of law. Digital evidence used in an investigation needs to be retrieved, handled, or analyzed in a forensically sound manner. But what is the forensically sound means? It means that during the acquisition of digital evidence and throughout the investigative process, the evidence must remain in its original states. What this basically means is that there should not be, there must not be any temperament on the evidence. There must not be any intervention on the evidence that will change the nature of evidence even a little bit. And the chain of custody is also very important. It's a process that tracks the movement of evidence through its collection, safeguarding, and analysis life cycle by documenting each person who handled the evidence, the date and time it was collected or transferred, and the purpose of the transfer. So this actually gives an advantage or gives an opportunity for the criminal justice system to inspect the phase or the process the evidence has actually gone through. And this is important to see where, just in case a mistake happened, where handling of evidence was a problematic matter, and where other things might have occurred. So you need to follow the evidence from the start to the end, up until the evidence actually has been received for custody by the court. And there are a lot of myths about the computer forensics, but before starting what the myths are, we should talk a little bit about computer forensics. Forensic science has been around for many centuries, and it has developed very much, and it has been using several techniques and procedures and new technology to process the evidence. But the digital evidence has some different features and applications in the forensic science, and it needs to be acknowledged. But the fact of the matter is that many people think the computer forensics have different features that normally we should not consider them as real. And one of the myths is that computer forensics and computer security are not same. The difference between the computer forensic and computer security is that computer security is proactive and computer forensics is reactive. The focus on the computer forensics is to investigate the nature of the digital evidence and understand how or where a crime might have been committed. The intersection between computer security and computer forensics often occurs in incident response. So for instance, you are in an incident response personnel, but you have to first take the logs of the information and response to the criminal incident or cyber attack, but in turn, you need to take the logs of the information and inspect and analyze how the attack occurred, which IP addresses involved in the attack, and so forth. So this gives an uh, overlapping incidents, overlapping of the work that you do during the incident's response. The second meat is on the computer forensics is about investigating uh, computers. Any device that stores files can be medium for computer forensics investigators to examine. For example, a cell phone, a SIM card is not a computer but may contain important digital evidence. So the target of the computer forensics is basically the digital evidence. So we'll talk about what the digital means, and we'll talk about the specifics of the operating systems and storages. But the fact of the matter is that the device should not even be electronically active at the time of the incident, and even a SIM card, whether it's used on a cell phone or not, is a subject to investigation, and it's part of the computer forensics investigation. And the third myth about the computer forensics is about investigating computer crime. Although this is true and very helpful, computer forensics is often equally important in murder, embezzlement, and corporate espionage investigations. So remember from the previous slides that I mentioned that the cybercrime investigations involves various types of crime, even the burglary. Then you can collect the GPS data from the mobile phone to see if that person was actually in the crime scene. As a matter of fact, the purpose of the computer forensics is to retrieve and analyze files with computer forensics hardware and software, utilizing a scientific method or methodology that's acceptable in a court of law. However, some people thinks that, or according to media, cyber forensics or computer forensics is just for undeleting the files deleted on a computer system. But this is not necessarily true. While the computer forensics capable of undeleting the files or recovering the files from the systems, it goes well beyond this capacity, and uh, the computer forensics provides an opportunity to the examiner to access to computer files that are not easily accessible. From time to time, there are things that the operating systems are unable to bring those files easily, but the computer forensics tools can easily bring those files in a better way. Digital evidence can help solve a wide range of crimes, including online threats, missing persons, financial fraud, theft, drug, child pornography, murders, suicides, and so many others. And for example, in 2005, the notorious BTK killer was identified by the investigators through a single file on a floppy disk. So this is very important for uh, traditional criminal investigations as well. Computer forensics have been helpful for both the traditional crime investigations and also cybercrime investigations, and also very helpful for civil investigations. Digital evidence is a new type of forensic evidence that is stored or transmitted electronically and contains reliable information to support or deny a theory as to how a crime occurred. So what we are doing is basically developing a theory to either refute or accept the theory in a given crime investigation. Digital evidence must obey the same legal constraints as physical evidence when used in a court of law without more stringent guidelines. So basically, in terms of addressing the digital evidence, the legal necessities are not quite different. And in the United States, the admissibility of digital evidence is determined by the federal rules of evidence. For instance, in the United Kingdom, police and criminal evidence and civil evidence acts play the roles, and many other countries have their own laws to process the digital evidence. We should mention about the nature of digital evidence to have a broader understanding about the features of the digital evidence. It is latent like fingerprints or DNA evidence, and it's easily altered, damaged, or destroyed, and the digital evidence is fairly time sensitive, and it's very cross jurisdictional borders quickly and easily. So the cross jurisdictional nature of the digital evidence actually sets it apart from majority of the traditional evidence types. Digital evidence is the use of scientifically derived and proven methods toward preservation, preservation of the evidence, collection of the evidence, validation of the evidence, and similarly, identification, analysis, and interpretation and documentation, and finally, the presentation of digital evidence derived from digital sources for the purpose of facilitating or furthering the reconstruction of events to be criminal or helping to anticipate unauthorized actions shown to disruptive to planned operations. This is a very long definition or explanation, but it's very useful for digital forensics investigators to understand the necessary components of the digital forensics investigation. So when you look at this definition, according to the scientific working group on digital evidence, actually the digital uh, scientific group on digital scientific working group on digital evidence have been meeting every year, whether online or in person, and they have contributed a lot on the development of digital forensic science. So you should be accessing to their websites, which is shown on this slide. And let me reiterate some of the things. Let's first start with the preservation. The first thing that you need to be careful about the digital evidence is the preservation of the evidence. You need to protect the evidence and make sure the nature of the evidence doesn't change. And you need to collect the evidence after taking precautions to preserve the evidence. And you need to validate the evidence is true and identify the elements that can be considered as criminal and analyze those elements and interpret based on your findings and document your findings in a court of law and uh, make a good presentation of your findings in a court of law that's understandable by the jury and judge. The new definition expands the scope outside of the courtroom, allowing researchers to consider criteria from a much wider spectrum of practitioners. The distinction brings with it at least one cautionary note meant to place boundaries on the expanded scope. Digital forensic science is not in the business of protection. It's not proactive, it's a reactive form of investigation. Digital forensics is quite an important matter to disclose the evidence and present to the evidence in a court of law that will uh, play an important role in determining the decision or sentence given to an offender. And it will also determine the conditions in a court of law where the victim needs to be compensated. Digital forensics is the retrieval, analysis, and use of digital evidence in a civil or criminal investigation. Any medium that can store digital files is a potential source of evidence for a computer forensics investigator. The computer forensics is a science because of the accepted practices used for acquiring and examining the evidence and its admissibility in the court. Forensically sound means that during the acquisition of digital evidence and throughout the investigative process, the evidence must remain in its original state. So it should not be tampered. Moreover, everyone who has been in contact with the evidence must be accounted for and documented in the chain of custody form. The laws that's concerning the digital evidence investigations are basically concerned with two issues: integrity and authenticity. Digital evidence satisfies integrity if the evidence is not modified during the process of acquiring and analyzing. And the ability to confirm the integrity of the evidence is actually the authenticity. So basically, two things are crucially important: integrity and authenticity, and they are actually very well related with each other. But you need to make sure that the integrity of the evidence is protected and the authenticity of the evidence is proved in a given investigation. And trustworthiness of digital data is related with all of these concepts. Many tools and methods exist that allow almost anyone to modify almost any attribute associated with the digital data. The reason to cast doubt on, or at least occasionally suspect the integrity of digital evidence is that they can be very easily altered, and they are very fragile, and it's easy to do or make a change on a digital evidence. So trustworthiness of the digital evidence is quite an important fact. And questions for digital evidence integrity can be asked. For instance, has the structure of the data remained unchanged since it was first obtained? Or how closely does the data accurately or truthfully represent a fact or factual events? That's another question in a court of law being asked. The purpose of assuring data integrity is to leave little room for technical arguments regarding the fidelity and uncovered the data. Uh, to be considered admissible evidence, it must meet all three of these requirements as determined by the judge prior to being discussed in an open court. For instance, the evidence must be relevant to determining a fact. So it must be relevant. So irrelevant data is not necessary to be included in a court of law. The fact that the evidence seeks to determine must be material, that is related to the case. It needs to be related with the case, and the evidence must be competent, meaning it must have been obtained legally. So illegal methods to obtain digital evidence is problematic and usually not admitted in a court of law. And evidence that results from an illegal search would be inadmissible because it's not competent. But we're going to go through this issue in the next classes as well. Digital evidence has so many features that impact the integrity of the investigation and the reliability of the data. Digital data is more easily forged than physical data. So it's very easy to manipulate the digital data. So it requires more well-trained inspectors or investigators to analyze and confirm the integrity of the data. The form of digital data is subject to analysis, is usually transformed in some way. So it's not like digital evidence is not like you're using a computer. It is actually being transformed to another on another format or presented, let's say, in another format that an ordinary people easily or a person can understand in a court of law the nature of data in an easier or better way. The form of digital data is subjected to analysis, is always processed before the scrutiny, and most analysis is performed using a digital copy or clone of the suspect information. So analysis is not being done on the real digital evidence as opposed to many traditional forms of digital evidence. So you need to have, in a traditional forensic evidence, you need to have or take a sample of the evidence. But in this case, what we are doing is to take the copy, a digital copy of, or bit by bit copy of the digital evidence, and we do not work on really on the real evidence, real digital evidence. So basically what we're working is on the copy or digital forensic copy of the evidence. And explanations of analytical methods can be misunderstood and cause confusion. So that's another challenge. It's not easy to figure out the technicalities of the digital evidence. And we are very accustomed to traditional forms of evidence when we hear about them, but the digital evidence is quite different, and it requires high mathematic skills to even understand the basics or simple nature of the digital evidence. And there are many attributes that can impact the data fidelity in a cybercrime or digital forensics investigation. First and foremost is the lack of standards. There needs to be some standard, or there needs to be a standard to investigate the criminal incident. And correctness of translation and transformation of mechanisms are important, and dependence on subjective reasoning is also very important to understand the data fidelity. And digital crime scene investigation process has actually three main steps. The first one is system preservation phase. The second one is evidence searching phase, and the third one is event reconstruction phase. And we'll go over all of these. In the system preservation phase, we try to preserve the state of the digital crime scene. So we need to protect the crime scene and uh, provide necessary means to secure the crime scene, as in digital, as in traditional crime scene, and protect people from, or let's say, prevent people from touching to digital evidence. The purpose of this phase is to reduce the amount of evidence that may be overwritten. And if, for instance, somebody else used the computer in a crime scene directly, checks if an ordinary person directly checks the data on the computer, then the data can be overwritten or even deleted, and it may trigger an event that can completely uh, deliver the data on the computer, which may later be irrecoverable. The process continues after data has been acquired from the system, because we need to preserve the data for future analysis. So this process is not completely a static process. This process still continues. And for that analysis, we will terminate all processes. What that analysis means is that traditionally computer forensic investigations were performed on data at rest. The content of hard drives are analyzed while the hard drive is not in use by a computer or server. This can be thought as a dead analysis. By turning the system off, and we will make duplicate copies of all data. We also use write blockers, which can be used to prevent evidence from being overwritten. So you see the picture of write blocker that prevents the evidence from being overwritten. So that's basically the physical method to protect the digital evidence. A forensic examiner first need to take the image of the forensic evidence. That can include a hard drive or SD card or any type of storage device that are being used within the network. But the first thing that the forensic examiner needs to take care is to take the image, the bit by bit copy of the hard drive, so that the exact copy of the hard drive is actually transferred to the evidence storage, or to the analysis unit. Being able to connect to and communicate with the source evidence device is an important method to actually provide the transfer of the evidence. And we need to ensure the source evidence device is not modified, and ensure that the copy is faithful and verifiable duplicate of the original evidence. I'll describe how to verify the evidence is in its original state. And write blocking is one of the most widely used technologies used to enable a successful connection to the source evidence device while ensuring that it remains unmodified. Here, what you see on this picture is the evidence collected through using a write blocker to a computer, and the forensic image is actually stored on a hard drive or storage. But the application that collects the information from this hard drive is or can be FDK Imager, Tableau Imager, NCase Imager, X-Face Forensics, or any forensically known forensic imager application or forensic analysis program. Evidence searching In the evidence searching phase, we are looking for data that support or refute hypotheses about the incident. The process typically starts with the survey of common locations on the computer. So you cannot directly or easily search the whole, let's say, very big house. It might be possible with a number of personnel, but in a given computer, you may encounter with millions of files or maybe billions of files on a server that you need to look for the data, and it's not easy. So typically you start by triage, which means you're looking for locating digital evidence. For instance, if you're looking for a child pornography case, you need to look at the images located on the computer. Based on the type of incident, if one is known, for example, if for instance we are investigating web browser habits, we look at the web browser's cache history file and bookmarks to identify the evidence. And if we are investigating a Linux intrusion, we may look for signs of rootkit or new user accounts. As you see, a rootkit is a malicious software bundle designed to give unauthorized access to a computer or hardware. And there are many search techniques, and a common search technique is to search for files based on their names or patterns in their names. And search for files based on keyword in their content is another technique, and search for files based on their temporal data, such as the last accessed or written time, is another method to identify the evidence. And we can search for known files by comparing the MD5 and SH1 hash of a file content with a hash database, such as the National Software Reference Library. So you have a lot of available tools to search the files, and there are MD5 or SH1 hash that specifically identify the file, and you can easily find the same or match the same file using the MD5 or SH1 hash algorithm. And the next phase is the event reconstruction phase. In the event reconstruction phase, it's important in digital forensics investigation to determine what happened during the incident. So you already did your search and identify the evidence, and you need to be able to reconstruct with or what happened during the criminal incident. And the digital investigator uses the findings of this phase to prepare reports for the court. Since the results must be reproducible and verifiable, it's necessary that the event reconstruction methods be rigorous and very strict. So eventually you are dealing with an evidence that will change the lives of people. Then that's very important phase to be able to reconstruct the evidence and present the evidence in a more strict way. Uh, it's important to understand the layers of analysis based on the design of the digital data. So I'll explain what the design of the digital data means. For example, you start an investigation through an analysis or collection of evidence from physical storage, and you do media analysis. And in this analysis, the storage devices that are used for non-volatile storage are typically organized in two volumes, okay? And a volume is a collection of storage locations that a user or application can write to and read from. So many times when you purchase, for example, a computer that's already installed with a Windows operating system, you usually see C drive and D drive, which means Actually, these are the volumes of your hard drive. The information is collected in a storage in different locations represented on your computer. And uh, the forensic examiner can also do a memory analysis. And memory analysis is a type of analysis that the investigator has to collect the evidence from the memory short, let's say in this case, a short memory or temporary memory that's available for the user. So basically, as the memory as the data can be easily deleted from the memory of the computer, this requires another type of investigation, which we call as live analysis. And in the volume analysis, there are a lot of things that needs to be analyzed. The first one is if there's available database analysis and space analysis, and the most important is the file system analysis, where you can analyze the applications and the rest of the information related with the file system from the file system analysis. And I haven't talked about the network analysis, which is another method of investigation, but we will go over it in the future classes. The purpose of the file system layer is to organize an empty volume so that we can store data and later retrieve them. And the file system is required to correlate a file name with file content. So on the one hand, you have a system that helps identify where the actual file is, and you have another location on your hard drive that actually resides on the hard drive. And therefore especially the name is very essential, and on this location of the file content is essential to correlate the file name and the content of the file. So for example, on this example, what you're seeing is basically the file name and the cluster name that helps the hard drive to correlate the file content with the file system. So in the file system, what we're seeing is the address of the file content as a cluster in the hard drive, okay, which is important, and also the name of the file that helps to correlate the information between the file name and also the file content. And the last access time or date may not be essential to correlate the file name and cluster address with the content of the file. Practically every type of file can be recovered using computer forensics. Email is arguably the most important type of digital evidence. Images and videos and websites visited and internet searches and cell phones and IoT devices all have some sort of a value in a given digital forensics investigations, and all are important to investigate, as we may not be sure where the actual evidence that will disclose or reveal the necessary information is not accurately or cannot be 100% accurately estimated. Electronic mail is the most important type of digital evidence, and it's important for the following reasons: control, ownership, and intent. So the sender and the receiver of the email plays a significant role, where the forensic investigator has to prove the sender is the actual sender and the receiver is the actual receiver, and the content of the email might help you to disclose significant evidence to identify the issues that needs to be presented in a court of law. And chain of events can be discovered using the emails and the prevalence of the communication between the organization's member uh, uh, who might be an organized crime syndicate, for instance, can give you an idea about the spread and prevalence of the organization or the incident related with the forensic investigation. And endurance is also an important aspect of the email for the forensic investigator, and obviously admissibility and accessibility are other important features of electronic email. And when we talk about the control ownership and the intent, email can show the intentions of the suspect and victim. Many times, nothing more personal than email. It's a way of communication between individuals, organizations, or sending a document that's necessary for a transaction. And we use email in every way, in almost every time of the day in a given work hour. And Sharon Lapotka case is an important example to the importance of the control and ownership and intent of the email usage. Glass and Lapotka exchanged numerous emails prior to their rendezvous in North Carolina, and it's the first case where a police department arrested a murder suspect with evidence primarily gathered from email message. And email chain of events actually provide us a method to restructure the events that led up to the crime. Email file contains a chain of conversation over a number of days and includes the times, dates, email sender, and recipient. So this is an easy way to figure out how the chain of events occurred and how you can actually create a timeline of the incidents using the email. In many cases, it's not possible for a witness to uniquely identify an object in a court. In those cases, a chain of evidence must be established, or let's say this is a chain of custody. This documents everyone who handles evidence, including the police who originally collected, the evidence technicians who process it, and the lawyers who use it in court. And the location of the evidence must be fully documented from the moment it was collected to the moment it appears in court to ensure that it's indeed the same item. So chain of custody provides a lot of opportunity to ensure the item or the evidence is in fact the same item. This requires thorough labeling of evidence and comprehensive logs noting who had access to the evidence at specific times and the reasons they required such access. So this is very important to understand the chain of events and to see the integrity of the evidence has already been compromised or not. The location of the evidence must be fully documented from the moment it was collected to the moment it appears in court to ensure that it's needed the same, that it is indeed the same item. This requires a thorough labeling of evidence and comprehensive logs noting who had access to the evidence at specific times and reasons they required such access. Email is pervasive in both personal and business transactions. And in the Enron investigation, tens of thousands of emails were acquired and investigated. And in some cases, accounting firms with a computer forensic unit will have a separate unit with a group of analysts who spend every day just working on email evidence. So email has a great value in any sort of investigation. And endurance is the tampering with evidence is defined as the concealment, destruction, alteration, or falsification of evidence. It's a serious crime that carries a felony charge in many states. So you can look or check Mattel versus MGA later to see how the endurance of email or the actually concealment on this and destruction of it in email evidence impacted the progress of the case. Accessibility is unlike many other sources of evidence. Access to an individual's email is not necessarily subject to a search warrant. The Department of Justice has argued that after email has been opened, it's no longer protected by the Stored Communication Acts. And although a judge has already rejected the government's petition for a warrantless search, the government has continued to argue that when an email resides in the cloud, the government has the right to freely access to that email. So this is an ongoing argument between the government and a judge who disagrees on the accessibility of the evidence. Images are another important subject of digital forensics investigation. It's the most usually formats of the image are BMP, Windows, bitmap, JPEG, and TIFF. And images are important to investigate or use in child exploitation cases. And digital photography or photographs provide detail about the type of camera used to take a picture, proving ownership, and often contains GPS data, which is a very valuable information that you can find the location of the evidence produced, thereby identifying the location of evidence and when the photograph was taken is actually acquirable and in important evidence to find the, for instance, offenders from a criminal justice perspective. And the other important issue in digital forensics investigations is file metadata. Information about a file and include the creation, modified, and lost access dates, and sometimes details about the user who created the file. So there's a lot of information on the metadata that connects the information between the, for instance, the subject of investigation as a person and the file content. And most professional computer forensics imaging and analysis software include Access Data's FDK application, contains a user interface that can filter by file type and also separate image. This gives a lot of easiness for the cybercrime investigator, especially. And these image files are grouped together and include image files that the software card away from other files. X-ray forensics is another tool to investigate digital evidence. X-ray forensics software and other forensic tools allow an investigator to filter all images by using a skin tone ratio. The result is that for the most part, only image of people are displayed after the search is run. So it brings or save you a lot of time, especially at the beginning of the investigation. You can, if you have a limited time and the investigation needs to be completed, or especially the initial part of the investigation, which will bring you an evidence to track down on the criminals or prove that there's a victimization here, then X-ray forensics is useful to identify only the image of people. And photographs have been used for many years in the courtroom, but digital limits today provide more information than traditional film photography. And computer forensics have a variety of forensic tools to choose from, including some that enhance the quality of video being analyzed. So, and other tools provide customizable stills and at predetermined points in a video. And these image stills are valuable because they can be included in any investigations report. And these tools provide the investigator with an efficient method of identifying when in the video the important incriminating evidence exists, eliminating the need to watch the video from start to finish. So this is another issue that needs to be kept in mind. And the other form of evidence is the websites or the websites visited and internet searches. Whether a live system should be forensically examined while it's turned on, evidentiary files and data related to the search and websites visited are more readily available when the computer is turned on. So basically, the random access memory helps you to see the files live when the computer is turned on and the processes are still running, and this can be done with a live analysis. This is because much of the user's current activity, including internet activity, is stored in random access memory. And access memory is often referred to as short-term memory or volatile memory because it contains largely its contents largely disappear when the computer is turned off. And it's important to understand that when a website visited, a client computer makes a request to a web server. Then the client computer actually downloads a HTML, an HTML document and related resources from the website, like images to the memory on the computer, in which gives an opportunity to see which or what kind of images has been or had been downloaded on the computer, what the interest of the offender, what are the interests of the offender, such as is the offender seeking an explosive device to buy from or materials to make an explosive device, or maybe searching for a location to hide himself after the attack. So there's a lot of options to figure out when websites visited and internet searches are analyzed. So here in this figure, what you're seeing is the client requesting a web page, and the web server delivers the web page onto the computer where the file actually resides on the random access memory of the device, which requires a live analysis to see the documents and evidence on the random access memory. And computer gurus have become the new experts, for instance, in divorce cases, and do-it-yourself sleuths are becoming more and more common. Divorce lawyers throughout the state are noticing less of a need to hire a private investigator and more reliance on social media evidence. So the evidence is almost the digital evidence almost is important in every type of case, in every criminal or civil type of case. And there are different types of forensic evidence and how it is used. We remember I actually shared a video in the previous classes, and here you see a skimming device is used to capture data stored on a magnetic stripe of an ATM card. So this is another type of digital evidence that puts the offender under scrutiny, or the digital device can either be used to commit a physical crime, or it executes a digital event that violated a policy or law. For the first case, if a suspect used the internet to conduct research about a physical crime, then this is related with the first case in the above description. But in the second case or latter case, when an attacker gains unauthorized access to a computer, or a user downloads contraband material, or a user sends a threatening email, this is actually the second case of the or form of the digital forensics investigation focus. Investigators. Some type of digital device that has been involved in an incident or crime is the focus of digital forensics investigation. The digital device was either used to commit a physical crime, or it executed a digital event that violated the policy or law, not limited to computers. And any medium that can store digital files is a potential source of evidence for a computer forensic investigator. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has recognized the importance of the computer forensics in computer security. And according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, uh, there's going to be job opportunities for people, which will increase by 12% between 2008 and 2028. The increase in employment opportunities will result from an increase in criminal activity on the internet, such as identity theft, spamming, email harassment, and illegal downloading of copyrighted materials. And skilled computer forensics examiners also have job opportunities within private investigation firms. So this is another opportunity for people to specialize in computer forensics. And jobs for computer forensics investigators are available in many different sectors of the economy, propelled by the digitization of the personal information. So in almost any sector, in almost any large company, there is a need for computer forensics investigation. Let's give an example to a computer forensic investigation. Consider a server that has been compromised, and you start an investigation to determine how it occurred and who did it, right? And then during the investigation, we find data that were created by events related to the incident. We recover deleted log entries from the server, find the attack tools, and find numerous vulnerabilities that existed on the server. Using this data and more, we develop a hypothesis about which vulnerability the attacker used to gain access and what she did afterwards. Later, actually, we examine the firewall log configuration and logs, and determine that some of the scenarios in our hypothesis are impossible because that the type of network traffic couldn't have existed, and we do not find the necessary log entries. Therefore, we have found evidence that refutes one or more hypotheses. And overall, we have gone over a lot of issues, and we need to understand what skills must a forensic investigator or examiner should or must he possess. Computer science forensic knowledge is an important aspect of a computer forensic investigator. Legal expertise is very important, needs to communicate very well to do the investigation with other departments or specialized units and with other parts of the criminal justice system. And there needs to be linguistic and abilities, and continuous learning is a must, obviously, and appreciation for confidentiality is quite an important aspect of being a computer forensic examiner. There are various types of digital forensics technology that includes the computer forensics, network forensics, mobile device forensics, digital image forensics, digital video, audio forensics, and memory forensics. The computer forensics is related with the identification, preservation, collection, and analysis and reporting on evidence found on computers, laptops, and storage media in support of investigations and legal processing. So basically, it is the traditional method of computer forensics technology. And network forensics is the monitoring, capture, and storing and analysis of network activities or events in order to discover the source of security attacks, intrusions, or other incidents, such as worms, viruses, or malware attacks, abnormal traffic and security breaches can actually be determined using the network forensics or the technology related with the network forensics. Network forensics is the use of scientifically proven techniques to collect, fuse, identify, examine, correlate, and analyze and document digital evidence from multiple actively processing and transmitting digital sources for the purpose of uncovering the facts related to the planned intent or measured success of unauthorized activities. Remember, we have talked about a lot of issues related to with the computer security and network security, and authorization was one of them. Meant to disrupt this, and corrupt and compromise system components, as well as providing information to assist in response to or recovery from these incidents. So the recovery and response is also very important, but actually the forensic examiner helps the actual computer security analyst to recover from the situation to its original state. Mobile device forensics has become more and more prevalent and prominent. It's the recovery of electronic evidence from mobile phones, smartphones, and SIM cards, PDAs, GPS devices, tablets, and game consoles. Mobile forensics is growing exponentially as the capabilities of these mobile devices continue to expand. Just think about 20 years ago how the cell phones or mobile phones that we were using, uh, think about their capacity to process the information. And cell phone forensics can tell you who the suspects know or knows, and appointments, who the suspect has been speaking to, what the person has been saying. Other mobile devices can provide image and video evidence and places visited online purchases, and websites visited. So when you're investigating a case that involves especially almost any case, obviously, include cell phones, and you can disclose a lot of information from those cell phones. It'll bring you a tremendous amount of information, and sometimes cell phones hard to handle, as some of the cell phones can apply encryption method, but this is another challenge that the law enforcement has to overcome. Text messages can give you a lot of opportunity to investigate and analyze the crime, and it's similar to the emails, but emails might bring you also a lot of information about the chain of the events, and similarly, text messages also can bring you a lot of information about the chain of the events. And IoT forensics is significant, and significant advances in artificial intelligence systems for our homes actually has been made, and AI-enabled devices can be controlled by our smartphone and integrated with smart home devices. And for home thermostats to the from home thermostats to the home surveillance devices to the home lighting, we see IoT forensics in almost everywhere, and we'll see they are going to be more prevalent in our society, and there needs to be more forensic analysis required in the future. And digital image forensics is the extraction and analysis of digitally acquired photographic images to validate their authenticity by recovering the metadata of the image file to ascertain its history. And digital video audio forensics is the collection, analysis, and evaluation of sound and video recordings. The science is the establishment of authenticity as to whether a recording is original and whether it's been tampered with either maliciously or accidentally. Any information created, stored, or utilized with technology is considered as electronically stored information. Word processing files, email and text messages, voicemail, information accessed via the internet, including social networking sites, information stored on cell phones, information stored on computers, computer systems, thumb drives, flash drives, CDs, tapes, and other digital media are actually related with the electronically stored information. And electronically stored information can be found on the witness computers, victims' computer or suspects' computer, or even on the web server. So the online evidence and the electronically stored information can help you solve the criminal case. In cyber forensics, investigators aim to retrieve digital evidence from digital and cyber physical devices, including network devices, computers, smart and mobile sensors and devices, as well as drones and robots. But unfortunately, forensics investigations are not very effective due to the increasing use of anti-forensic techniques, which is a great challenge for the forensic examiners. And another issue that you should understand in terms of the scope of digital evidence is the expert witness. Practitioners are under an obligation as expert witnesses to provide factual accounts of digital scenarios, which must be underpinned by robust knowledge and evidential findings. And the digital forensics expert witnesses are under a responsibility to present juries with the information needed to make an informed decision. And criminal trials are not a consideration of factual innocence or factual guilt in any straightforward sense. They're highly technical. They're They are highly technical affairs which attempt to determine if the defendants are guilty or not guilty of criminal offenses on the basis of reliability of evidence before the court. Criminal investigations needs or investigators needs to understand the law relating to the acquisition of digital evidence by law enforcement agencies as governed by the Fourth Amendment and the statutory privacy laws codified in the wiretap statute, the Electronic Communications Act as an example could be counted, and the pen and trap statute is also important for the forensic examiner or cybercrime investigators to investigate the crime based on the core rules and amendments. Civil investigations are or have differences, and private corporations investigating their own employees may not adhere to most of the legal constraints discussed above. And frequently, private corporations require employees to sign computer use policies that include stipulations regarding the monitoring of computer activities. And in these cases, employees typically resign their privacy rights, and this gives a lot of room for the investigators without actually without any need for search warrant or any use of typical laws that's important for search or wiretapping. And the Fourth Amendment limits the ability of government agents to obtain evidence without a warrant. A warrantless search does not violate the Fourth Amendment if the agent's conduct does not violate an individual's reasonable expectation of privacy or the search falls within an exception to the warranty requirement, then therefore agents must consider if a search violates the expectation of privacy. And even if a search does violate this expectation, it may still be reasonable if it falls within the exception to the warranty requirement. So the specifics of the Fourth Amendment needs to be understood well and established well within a given police department or cyber investigation unit. The Fourth Amendment determines what constitutes a reasonable expectation of privacy, actually, and this is very difficult in cases involving computers. To assist federal investigators, the U.S. Department of Justice recommends that agents treat a computer as a closed container. That actually helps to transition from a closed container to a computer. And the Fourth Amendment prohibits law enforcement agencies or agents from accessing and viewing computer information without a warrant if they would be prohibited from opening a closed container and examining its contents in the same situation. So similar rules can be applied in both a closed container and computer. However, courts have reached different conclusions on whether or not individual computer files should be treated as separate closed containers. So there needs to be more research and understanding about the Fourth Amendment and its application in the state that you are actually working for. Occurred since 1995, and in 1980s the advent of computer, we witnessed to the advent of personal computer, and the first electronic bulletin boards emerged and facilitated communication between hackers, and subsequently hacking groups such as the Legion of Doom in the United States emerged. In 1983, the film War Games, remember from the first session, introduced to the public to the concept of hacking with a personal computer to gain access to government computers. And in 1984, Eric Corley published 2600, the Hacker Quarterly, which facilitate the exchange of hacking ideas. So this is also another important cornerstone in terms of the computer forensics and computer security. In 1984, the FBI established the magnetic media program, which later became known as the Computer Analysis and Response Team, and was responsible for computer forensics examinations. And in 1984, the US Congress established the National Center for Missing and Exploited Child. In 1990s, we had seen a significant impact of the internet on the computer forensics, and web browsers prompted a massive migration of computers to the internet. And in 1998, the Defense Reform Initiative Directive directed the US Air Force to establish the Joint Department of Defense Computer Forensics Laboratory, which will be responsible for counterintelligence and criminal and computer fraud evidence investigations. And the IRS Criminal Investigation Division Electronic Crimes Program funded Elliot Spencer to develop a computer forensics tool known as iLOG. And in 1994, Congress mandated that the USSS apply its forensic and technical knowledge to criminal investigations connected to missing and exploited children. And in 2001, the USA Patriot Act mandated that the United States Secret Service expand its successful New York Electronic Crime Task Force and establish the Electronic Crime Task Force nationwide. And the history of computer forensics actually started with the first in 1994 with Mosaic Netscape, the first graphical web browser when it was released, and the International Organization on Computer Evidence was later formed in the next year, and USSS founded the New York Electronic Crimes Task Force, and the first regional computer forensics laboratory was established in 1999 in San Diego. And the IRS Criminal Investigation Division later began using iLOG, which is a cybercrime investigation tool or forensic tool, let's say in this case. And the USA Patriot Act and USSS were directed to establish ECTFs nationwide, and Interpol developed a database of exploited children. So in almost every year we are seeing actually very fast development in the history of computer forensics. In 2002, the Department of Homeland Security was established, and in 2003, the PROTECT Act was passed to fight against child exploitation. And later in 2003, fusion centers were established, and the National Computer Forensics Institute was established in 2007. And the formation of Interpol Computer Forensics Analysis Unit was approved in 2008, and the first European ECTF was formed in Italy, and the second European Electronic Crime Task Force was formed in the United Kingdom. So we've seen a lot of advancement in terms of the computer forensics. In 2011, the Patriot Sunsets Extension Act was enacted, and the Edward Snowden file fled to Russia following a classified data leak at the NSA, and the trial of the Silk Road ends with the conviction of its creator, Rose Ulbricht. This is an important case as the Silk Road was probably or one of the first dark web pages that was distributing illicit contrabands. And the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act was enacted, and the introduction of Investigatory Powers Act also enacted in the UK, and many developments have. Several agencies are involved in computer forensics investigations that includes the Department of Defense, Federal Bureau of Investigation, and U.S. Internal Revenue Service, Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, National White Collar Crime Center, and Interpol, and Computer Technology Investigators Network and Infrared. A lot of agencies are involved in computer forensics investigations, and there's also local police departments or sometimes county sheriff's departments also have computer forensics units to analyze some basic types of crimes related with the digital evidence. And here we have the chapter 1 summary, and the chapter 2 will be Windows operating file systems. In the next lesson, here you will have some links, and I'll post several other links onto the Blackboard site. And I thank you very much for listening to this actually lesson. This is the first lesson that's about specifically about digital forensics investigation, and I recommend you reading the first chapter and be prepared for the second chapter. Thank you all and have a nice weekend.